今回は E.B.ゼックミスタクリティカルシンキングをもとに思い込みを排除して物事を合理的に考える思考法を英語で確認していきます。最後に内容を確認する英語の問題を用意しています。日本語訳と問題の答えは概要欄に載せていますので、合わせてご覧ください。
Critical thinking is not about finding faults in other people. It is the ability to judge ideas carefully, using reasons and standards. It is not only logical thinking. It also includes an understanding of how human beings make assumptions, distort judgment, and justify their own ideas. In this sense, critical thinking adds scientific testing and awareness of cognitive limits to logical thinking. Critical thinking is not determined only by natural talent. What matters is the habit of observing carefully, not clinging to our first idea, and changing our view when a better explanation appears. Knowledge and reasoning skills are not enough if we do not use them. Like reading or work, critical thinking develops through conscious practice. One area where people often make mistakes is causal judgment. To judge causation, we need to consider three conditions: covariation, time order, and the exclusion of other possible causes. Even if two events change together, that alone does not prove a causal relationship. The cause must come before the effect, and we must also check whether a third variable, or another explanation, could account for the result. The method of agreement alone is not enough, because it only looks at cases that match. We also need contrasting cases, as in the method of difference, to see what happens when the possible cause is absent. In causal judgment, we also need to watch for illusory correlation and post hoc reasoning. Illusory correlation means overestimating a weak or non-existent relationship. Post hoc reasoning means assuming that one event caused another simply because it happened first. Extreme results can also move back toward average levels without any special intervention. This is called regression to the mean. When we judge improvement or decline, we need to consider this natural movement. People also make biased attributions when they explain other people's behavior. The fundamental attribution error is the tendency to explain another person's action in terms of personality or ability, rather than the situation. Kelly's cube model helps us move away from this simple judgment. It asks whether other people act the same way, whether the action occurs only toward one target, and whether the same person repeats the action in the same situation. Group judgment creates another bias, the ultimate attribution error. This means explaining the success of an outgroup as luck or chance, while explaining its failure as a lack of ability or flawed character. When we are generous to our own group and harsh toward an outside group, our interpretation of events becomes distorted. We need to ask which group our explanation helps, and which group it hurts. We are not fully objective when we think about ourselves either. Self-serving bias makes us explain failure by outside causes, and success by our own ability or effort. Self-enhancing bias also connects good results to ourselves in a convenient way. Cognitive dissonance occurs when conflicting beliefs or actions create discomfort. To reduce that discomfort, people may change their interpretation. An explanation that protects the self is not always a correct explanation. Our judgments are not always based on strict calculation. We often use heuristics or mental shortcuts. With the availability heuristic, events that are easy to remember seem more likely to happen. Events that appear often in the news, or events that leave a strong impression, can feel more common than they really are. With the representativeness heuristic, a case seems more likely to belong to a category when it looks typical of that category. These shortcuts are efficient, but they can also distort judgment. Metacognition is important for learning. It means being aware of how we think, what we know, and what we do not know. There can be a large gap between what people actually know and what they think they know. When metacognition is wrong, people may treat disagreement as another person's mistake and fail to notice their own lack of understanding. Learning improves when we plan, monitor, and evaluate our understanding. Understanding is also shaped by the knowledge structures already in our minds. A schema is a framework built from knowledge and experience. When a related schema is activated, information becomes easier to understand. A story with shared assumptions is easier to follow because the right schemas are active. But schemas can also become stereotypes, leading us to judge individuals through group images. In learning, we should use schemas while also checking whether they make our judgment too rigid. Memory is not a perfect copy of facts. It is a reconstructed interpretation, shaped by current knowledge and inference. For that reason, people may feel sure about an answer even when the answer was created later as an explanation. The illusion of knowing means believing that we understand something when we do not. Unless errors are pointed out, people easily assume that they understood what they heard or read. Practice questions and pretests help us check real understanding. Flexible thinking is also essential. Absolute thinking treats things as fixed and independent of conditions. Conditional thinking recognizes that things may change depending on the situation. Definitive presentation tends to encourage mindless thinking, while language that leaves room for possibility tends to encourage mindful thinking. Functional fixedness also blocks problem solving by making it hard to see new uses for familiar objects. To think critically, we sometimes need to step back from the explanation or use that first comes to mind. In problem solving, the first task is to define the problem. A problem is the gap between the current state and the goal state. To analyze it, we need to check goals, tools, operations, and constraints. A well-defined problem has a clear goal, a clear path, and one correct answer. An ill-defined problem lacks a clear path and a fixed answer. Many daily and work problems are ill-defined, so we should try more than one way to define them. The basic flow of problem solving is understanding, planning, action, and checking results. Before solving a problem, we should separate known facts from assumptions and avoid bringing in unnecessary assumptions. Human information processing capacity is limited, so problems should not stay only in the mind. Writing them down and making them visible helps. We should check the tools available to us, but avoid spending too many resources on planning. Monitoring progress and changing plans when needed leads to practical problem solving. Having knowledge does not always mean being able to use it. Inert knowledge is knowledge that should be usable, but is hard to recall at the moment when it is needed. To avoid this, we should not learn knowledge only in one fixed context. We need to connect it to similar situations. Analogy uses similarity to reshape situations or connect them with related cases. By linking an unknown problem to a known structure, we can find clues for a solution. In decision-making, always chasing the best option is not necessarily optimal. Satisficing means choosing an option that meets basic requirements instead of searching endlessly for the best. With complex problems, collecting more information does not always lead to better judgment. It may only increase hesitation. Systematic decision-making begins with awareness of a problem, then moves through definition, options, evaluation, decision, and action. We need to separate information that supports judgment from information that only delays it. The goal of critical thinking is not to guess the correct answer every time. It is to keep open the possibility that our ideas may be wrong, and to move toward better explanations and judgments. Human beings make assumptions, reconstruct memory, simplify causation, and interpret events in convenient ways. That is why we need to ask for evidence, look for alternative explanations, redefine problems, and revise our thinking when necessary. This attitude becomes the foundation for deeper learning and more effective problem solving. Review questions. Listen and check your understanding. Question 1. The summary says causation needs 3 conditions. Name the 3 conditions. Question 2. In the fundamental attribution error, do people focus too much on the situation, or on personality and ability? Question 3. Why should we separate known facts from assumptions before solving a problem? Question 4. Why is the method of agreement alone not enough to test causation?
お疲れ様でした。内容を定着させたい方は、ぜひ繰り返し聞いてみてください。英語表現を確認したい方は、構文動画も合わせてご活用ください。